Hello and welcome to another show with me, your host, Johnny, and my boy, LD. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, sir, how are you? I'm good,
Yes,
man.
I am very, very well. We discussed the Mr. Tate last week. If you haven't checked that video out, make sure you check it out. It's a really good discussion where we talk
hmm
about the influence of this man, how well he's done, what he's doing now, and what we think he might do in the future. If you haven't already, make sure you check it out. But today we are talking about something that isn't necessarily in the conversation for the average Joe, but for all those financial heads out there, they are definitely talking about it. Currency wars. Is this the end of the US dollar? It's a big subject,
hmm
right?
Very big at the moment. But you'd be forgiven for not thinking that because we're not seeing anything on the mainstream media. I've
Pretty
not seen
crazy.
anything, which is crazy to me.
I
And
know.
considering the things that are going on, yeah, it's definitely something we should be talking about for sure.
100%. And as I said, when we spoke previously about it, and I said to you, oh, what should be our next subject? What do you think would be a good thing to talk about? And you said, you know what, Johnny, we should talk about the currency wars. And I'll be honest with you, I did think to myself, that's actually really, really, it's really on the button. It's pretty much what people are talking about, sort of like, in the economic world.
hmm
But as you said, not really being discussed at the local level. But actually, we really do need to be talking about it because of the impact that decisions that are being made now will have with us now and
Yep.
into the future.
Touches all of us. So
It
why are they not speaking about this?
well, I think we're going to definitely get into that 100%. But do you know what? What I was thinking was before we go to uh, mainstream, before we go to right as in today,
Yep.
I think it would be a good idea to build some context because if you don't know what's going on,
hmm
then it may be kind of like, well, what are you guys talking about? Why is it something that you've taken the time to have a conversation about? What's the background? What's the history? So, you know me, you know what I'm like. I
Yeah,
did
yeah.
my research. I started digging deep.
I
I
probably
went,
didn't go as deep as you.
well, I didn't know, but you know what? You probably didn't need to. You probably already knew. But I did think to myself, oh, let me go back to the 70s. And then I thought, actually, no, let me go back to the 60s. And I thought, actually, now I need to go back further.
hmm
And this journey, when we're talking about the currency wars of 2023 that we're in right now, can go all the way back to 1939. Now, I know you're going to be thinking,
Mm,
what? So I'm going to tell you a quick story. 1939 was a very interesting year because it was the year that the Second World War started. So you've
mhm.
got the First World War that was between 1914 and 1918, and then they signed an armistice. We're talking all the powers that had been blowing each other up for the last 4 years. They signed a ceasefire, not as people seem to make it out like this was the end of the war. It was just an end of fighting. They just
Yeah.
ceased firing. They said, you know what? We're going to stop firing at each other. During that time, obviously, there were financial ramifications for the Germans who had to pay repatriations and they had to pay out silly amounts of money because
Mhm.
they were technically the losers and the victors benefited from it. Now, this built up hatred within Germany for many, many years until we get to 1939, where they started firing again and they started shooting each other. And this went on, obviously, until 1945. Now, what was interesting in my research was that to the bigger wide world, i.e., maybe the Americans, uh, this would have started in 1941 because that was when they got sucked into the Second World War.
Mhm.
But Britain and obviously its Commonwealth or Empire nations
Yep.
were already fighting this war from 1939 on their own, and they were literally bleeding their coffers dry. I
Mhm.
mean, we're talking they were spending ridiculous amounts of money building, building tanks, building boats, you know, paying for armory, which was being made by the Americans, I might add. So the Americans were definitely making their money for the best part of a few years. And then we get to a situation where, as we know, the Americans got sucked into the Second World War after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I told you I went deep. This is a history lesson, but we are going.
I'm listening, and I'm learning as well. So
we are going to get to the point.
Keep going.
So we get to 1944. The whole of Europe is pretty much been battered, blown to smithereens, shreds.
The Blitz,
and the firebombing in Dusseldorf. There were so many horror stories, but financially, it was, this bankrupted pretty much Europe. The world power at that time was the UK. So the United Kingdom, it was the ruler of the waves. It had its empire. It was literally on its knees. Now, so you imagine you've got the world power is on its knees, and you've got this up and coming country that hasn't got in the war, has been selling, making money all this time, building up massive reserves of money. And then we get to 1944 and the war is over in Europe. Germany has been defeated. And we get to the 1st of July, 1944, which was where...
Wow.
I know. I told you it was going deep. We get to the 1st of July, 1944, where 44 delegates meet up in a place called Bretton Woods in New Hampshire. This is where, obviously, I told you there was a road I was going down. Obviously, I went a bit far, but I came back in.
You deviated a little bit out, but you brought it back onto track.
I told you I would come back. Yeah. So we get to where basically the ruling powers that are left. So who's left? Japan has been blown to smithereens. Germany has been battered to smithereens. Russia is now pretty much out of the picture because it's a communist state. The people that are left are what was left of Europe, the UK, and America. America sits all these people down, sits them all in, they go to this random holiday park in Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, and they sit them down and they say, look, whilst you are all fighting, you moved all of your gold to our country, to our shores. We put all of your gold in Fort Knox and looked after it for you. Allegedly.
That's another story.
Allegedly.
Right?
I'm just saying this is my research. My research says that all of those countries, they said, you know what? We need a safe haven for our gold. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it to a safe haven, which was America. Because at the time, America was too far away from Germany to bomb. It was too far from the Japanese to get their navy over. So America kind of got away with pretty much unscathed. Yeah, they sent soldiers abroad to fight. Obviously, Okinawa and all the, the Battle of the Midway and all these fights they had in the Pacific against the Japanese and obviously in mainland Europe. But the actual heartland, the country itself, was pretty much left untouched, which means that they still had industry. They still had factories. They still had people that could work. And they had a very, very, very good population of young people that could have babies and therefore make more babies that could work. So America held 2/3 of the known gold reserves. Imagine that. 2/3 of all the gold that had ever been dug out of the ground was sitting in America.
So this is Europe, giving their gold to America,
100%
for safekeeping.
For safekeeping, yeah.
Trust me, fingers crossed. I guarantee I'll give you back whenever you're ready.
100%.
Okay.
But what the Americans did, which was really smart, was they said, "Look, how about we do something different? We need stability." Now, we have got the biggest army. We've got the biggest navy. We will guarantee safety on the high seas with our navy because UK now was no longer a force to be reckoned with. We have the fighter power. We've got soldiers. We've got massive armies. We have influence financially. We are going to do a different system. We're not going to give you back your gold. What we're going to do is we're going to peg all of your currencies. All of your currencies we're going to peg together. You will peg your currency to our dollar, and our dollar we will peg to gold at $35 an
It's
ounce.
$35 an ounce. Yeah, I remember this part.
So imagine this. So the system is you've got the gold in the bank, the Americans have got the dollars. You guys will all basically, peg your money to our dollar, but we are protected, as in a gold standard. We will peg our dollar to the gold, which is $35 an ounce, which stabilizes the economies of the world.
Yep.
Pretty much stabilizes. It is the perfect system because, as you know, if I'm English, I trust you, Mr. America. I trust you. If I'm French, I trust you that you know, America, you will look after our gold and you won't do anything stupid. You won't do anything because you're going to peg your dollar to gold. There's a gold standard. There is stability in the world.
You know what I'm thinking? I know you're making great points, but I'm just thinking to myself, can you imagine how much gold we would stack if it was $35 an ounce?
Oh my goodness. So let's just now move slightly forward. So obviously I sent you guys miles into the past. You know, I sent you all the way to 1939. And I think Leon was like, where's Johnny going with this? I brought it back.
Hey,
Bretton Woods.
Yeah,
the discussion's been made. Yeah. Everybody's happy because you guys, you need to keep, you're going to need to, keep a certain amount of dollars convertible. So you're going to need to keep a certain amount of dollars so you can trade, which makes sense because you're going to be trading with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That helps the Americans because it keeps the Americans as the reserve currency.
It was basically a masterstroke, wasn't it?
Beautiful. But it does get worse. Because remember, this discussion is about currency wars. At the moment, there's no war. The war's already done. Physically, people have been blown to smithereens. Hiroshima and Nagasaki is now been vaporized. We're talking America has no competitor financially, militarily, economically. There is no one. America is the main force.
Monopoly right now.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now that we've got stability, the Americans were like, well, now that the rest of the world trusts us, we can print money. Because ultimately, you believe that your money's pegged to my dollar that's pegged to gold. Mm-hmm. So doesn't matter technically how much money, as in dollars, I print, because you guys are confident that I'm looking after your gold and I'm pegged to the dollar, the gold standard. So I'll just start printing money. Now, during this time, and this is where it really just blows my mind, we had America, they had a space program. So keep it in mind, we don't know what's going on in Soviet Russia. We don't know how they are funding their big spending. They're sending people to the moon. Kennedy's also wanting to send people to the moon to beat communism. We are our economy is democracy. It's better than communism. We need to beat it. So they matched them and they spent bajillions. I don't know how many millions of pounds, if not billions of pounds, were spent. But the Americans had a space program which was literally no one else could do that. The British couldn't do that. The French couldn't do that. The Danes, the Swedes. None of these other countries were anywhere near there. But the Americans had the money, and therefore it was cool. Everybody was happy because America spent, and they were like, that's great. Then America started getting sucked into wars. Now, wars, as we can see currently, cost big money. Lots and lots of money. And the Americans got sucked into, Cambodia and Vietnam and all these other big, massive wars.
I think we could have another
discussion
on about whether it's being sucked in into these wars or
however They were spending lots and lots of money. Now it's probably around the late 60s coming into the 70s that the rest of the world started going, hang on a minute. I know that we're doing, our fiscal policy is good. We're being very shrewd with our spending because obviously we are limited to how much we can spend because that $35 an ounce is the go-between. We can't spend any more than that, or then we're eating into our gold reserves. We can't do that. So we're going to be very, very responsible with our spending, which they did within reason. But then they looked over the shores at the America. They were like, hang on a minute. They're spending a lot of money. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not entirely sure there's that much gold. Like, is there really that much gold that they could spend that amount?
Yep.
So they decided maybe it's time that we got our gold back. Because keeping in mind,
or at least go and check on it. Let's just go and at least
you get what I mean?
Let's go and see what's over there.
Yeah, like, and I know it sounds crazy, but the only reason you had our gold in the first place was to protect us from ourselves, to protect us from the menace that was communism, or maybe the menace that was Germany, or the menace that was Japan. That was no longer an issue. You and now just have our gold. So the French, the Brits, they all were like, yeah, do you know what? I think I'll start converting back from holding so much, so many dollars in treasury bonds. I don't need to hold them. I'd rather just hold the real thing. Why hold the fake thing that represents the real thing when I'm old enough now? I'm a big boy now. I can hold my own gold in my own bank.
And probably they heard somebody, I can't remember who said the quote, he who has the gold writes the rules.
100%. Yes.
You know what I mean?
So you think about this, right? They all then started to try and get back their gold, which is common sense. You've held it for a little while. Maybe it's time for us to get it back. Only fair. We love you, America. You love us. We've been cool for the last 40 years. We're talking when, there's no foul here, no hatred. We love you. Just give us back our gold. Cue Mr. Richard Nixon. And I love it. Honestly, I've watched his video, obviously doing my research, but I've watched this video many times over, where on August the 15th, 1971, this man addresses the nation to say that, he's protecting the dollar. I can't do an American accent, but that's terrible. So for all my American friends, I apologize. I tried to do a Nixon, but I can't do it. But he went, we need to protect the dollar from the speculators. We need to protect the dollar at all costs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tether our connection to gold. We are going to take ourselves off of the gold standard. In other words, we are now no longer going to be, you got your money, you tether your money to our dollar. Our money is tethered to that 35 ounce. That no longer exists. That is now disappeared.
And that was 1971.
That was on the 15th of August,
1971. Okay.
Nixon addressed the world and basically told the Federal Reserve, hey, guess what? Before, you pretended that you were pegging your dollar to the gold. Now you don't need to pretend, because we have now created a fiat currency, a currency that is only backed by the confidence that I tell you this money means something. Therefore, this money now does mean something. It has,
and you accept.
And you accept, exactly.
So both sides agree.
It has value. Are you with me so far?
I'm here.
Right.
I'm here.
So this is 1971. Now, this is what's frustrating for you and I. We are born. We are born just after this event. So,
what happened to the gold price after they come off the standard?
We are going to go around the artificial manipulation of the gold price. Trust me, we will get into that. That don't worry, the story continues. But as a side note, I have 4 families that I want us to talk about.
Oh, wow.
4 families. So we have family number 1 is a carpenter. He is a hard-working carpenter. He has 8 children. He has a mortgage. He works hard. And on his wage alone, he is able to buy his house, send all of his kids to school, to college, further education, and see them off into the big wide world, right?
Mm-hmm.
What decade do you think that they were born in? Or what decade do you think I'm talking about here?
Where you could send 8 kids to
Yeah,
school.
what decade? So roughly, what decade do you think we're talking about when I say give you that example of one man on one wage can feed 8 children and a wife, have a mortgage and a car and savings, and live comfortably as a carpenter? What decade did he live in?
Are you going to tell me the 50s?
Okay, boom. Okay, we'll go with the 50s because that's a good number. Obviously, in the 40s, most of those youngsters were blown to smithereens. They've come home. They've settled down now, forgetting the war, and they are now living their life.
Rebuilding.
Rebuilding. Beautiful. Second family. Dad is a carpenter. He has 4 children. Unfortunately, mummy has to go to work as well. And they basically have a mortgage. But the same examples that I mentioned before, they now have. What decade are they in?
4 children.
And mum and dad now are both working.
Both at work. So
yes.
This sexual revolution. So maybe the 60s.
Oh, boom! So we're loving it. We're going with this story, aren't we? It's a gradual continuation. Yep. Okay, so family number 3. Mum and dad are both working. They have 2 children.
2.5.
They have no savings, but they do have a mortgage and they are able to pay their way, but they have no savings. So in other words, they are now officially paycheck to paycheck, but they have exactly the same things, as in they are still able to function, pay bills and all of those kind of things. What decade are we in now?
Boy, that sounds like a whole bunch of decades, to be fair. That's like from the 80s to now.
Okay, right. But there is one more family. So this is why I say it to you.
All right. So let's go with the 80s, 90s.
Okay, so we go with the 80s.
Yeah.
And then the last one is mum and dad both working. They may even have 2 jobs each. That at least mum may have 2 jobs to work around the childcare, because obviously she can't just be at work, because she may have to be, doing school runs and basically doing everything else. They are unfortunately not able to buy a house. They got to rent. They've got no children. They've got no savings, but they do have something else. They have credit. Okay. But another word for credit is debt, and they have lots of it.
But that can be any time from the 90s to present day.
Right.
Really. Yeah.
I have just described for you, LD, the living standard of the last 50 years. Inflation, as well as the cost of living, as well as choices that people have made, as well as the perpetual printing of money, what it has done to the average person. I'm talking about the millionaire. I'm talking about the average person that lives on the street, can no longer even afford to buy a home. They can't afford to save money. They can't afford to have one parent working. If they have a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend, whatever, if there's two of them, the likelihood they are both working, not because they want to, but because they have to.
Okay.
We are,
So right, where we are now,
yeah,
we're saying that there has been 50 plus years of money printing, right?
100%.
And
Yeah,
that has run concurrently with the decline of everybody's living standards,
100%.
right? Okay.
So we are talking as they printed more money. So once 1971 kicked in and the controls of spending, of printing money went out there, because if I said to you right now, if I put £1 billion into the economy, people will spend. That's the simple out. People in general will spend money. If you give it to them, they'll spend it. Yeah. Well, that drives price because there's more money in the system. So why would I sell my house for 50,000 when I can sell it for 60,000? Why would I sell my house for 60,000 when I can sell it for 70,000? But that house is not worth 70,000. That house is not worth 80,000. But it's gone up in price because there's so much more money just floating around. Now, I'll give you a perfect example, and this is something that you and I both can attest to as to where we both grew up. When our forebears came to this country from South America, from the Caribbean, from Asia, from Africa, when they came over to this country and they put money together to buy a home in the 60s, how much did they averagely pay for a house? These big, 4 up, 1 down,
My
big.
grand purchased 3-story house for £6,000.
Yes, that's my point.
In the 60s. Yeah.
In the 60s. So I did some research the other day and I looked at my grandmother's house. Now, my grandmother's house is in a nice area in South London. The price that was paid was even less because I think maybe my grandmother came to this country a little bit earlier than yours did.
Earlier, yep.
So she paid a little bit less for that, and around the £2,000 mark, which is, don't get me wrong, £2,000 is a lot of money in those days. It was a lot of money, and people say it's relative, but it's not. It is not relative because it was relative to earnings.
Yep.
And keeping in mind, I did some research. I went onto a reputable website, typed in my address, and that house was sold a couple of years ago for £1.5 million. Let's. I just want to, but this is the thing I wanted to mention was my grandparents left the UK shores to retire back to the Caribbean in the late 90s, and they sold their house for, I don't know, 150, 200,000 pounds, maybe. I'm not even entirely sure, but it was no more than that. No more than 200,000. Yep. So between the noughties and we now, so 23 years.
Yep.
My grandparents' house has gone up in value over £1 million.
Yeah, that's
£1
insane.
million. But wages certainly haven't gone up in relation to the price of that house. Just hasn't happened, has it?
No,
it hasn't happened.
Not at all.
So, and obviously, all of these things are happening. I want to share a photo because this photo that I'm about to share with you now will explain why we are now talking about currency wars. Can you see that picture? What do you see there?
Yeah, that's Xi Jinping,
100%.
and is it MBS
And that is the
from?
former, so it's an older photo because
Okay,
that was the former ruler
yeah,
before the crown prince took over.
hmm
Um,
Saudi Arabia.
that was a photo taken where two leaders, their relative countries, were signing treaties,
Mm.
talking about the future of business, i.e., oil, gas.
Yeah.
Now, nothing should send shivers down the spine of people more than seeing those two nations communicating with each other. Now, a few years later, we got BRICS. BRICS being Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, signing treaties to do business with each other without using the dollar. So basically, completely taking out the dollar as the means of exchange.
Mm.
Now, most of these countries keep massive reserves of US treasury bonds. They have got vast amounts of cash that they need to use to be able to do transactions. If they don't use the dollar to do those transactions, what does that do to the dollar?
Yeah, well, I mean, conversation is about, is this the end of the US dollar?
Yeah,
And I think going from your intro to where we are now,
yeah,
we're kind of covering the four out of the for and against argument, right? The debate
yeah,
as to whether. So what we're saying, these are the reasons why we believe the US dollar could be finished, right?
yeah,
BRICS, as we know, is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
yeah,
Yeah, they hold between those five countries alone. That's just over 40% of the global population. Yeah,
yeah.
excuse me.
That's crazy.
24% of global GDP, and something like 16, 17% of global trade.
Yeah,
That's five countries.
that's
Bearing in mind they've got BRICS Plus coming, which
yeah,
is like they're bringing in sort of allies and they're scooping up the rest of the world
yeah,
that are emerging economies and markets. Yeah. People that maybe the West haven't necessarily treated the fairest throughout history.
yeah,
So these people have more of a natural affinity to countries that have the same aspirations as themselves. Remember, we in the West, we've already had our industrial boom, our
mhm,
industrial thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Now they are having their golden years. They're coming into their own. They're doing their own thing. This, I think we're looking at the decline of the West, and the head of the West is the US. We know that, right?
yeah,
They're the big dogs of the table. Now, going back to your debt, what you were saying about debt, right?
yeah.
You know, in the last 100 years, the debt that America has held has gone from, I think it's about $400 billion
That's crazy.
100 years ago. That's
Yeah,
100 years ago. To now, we're currently at about 30,
trillion.
31 trillion
Yeah,
dollars.
yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's almost it's eye watering.
that is insane. That
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 can't be
that's
paid back.
that can't be paid back. It's you're only going to just print more money.
Yeah,
You're in a cycle where that's the only thing you can do. Now they're seesawing this thing of, right, inflation starts running away, we raise interest rates.
hmm,
Interest rates get too high, we try and bring it back down a bit to not punish everybody with mortgages, debt, etc.
But I
And
have
then
a
with
question. I have a
seesawing.
question.
Yeah, go.
In fact, I'm gonna write it actually. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but there are people that you probably work with that you know
Hmm.
that are not old enough to have ever paid interest on their mortgage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
I find it blows my mind that people are actually like, what do you mean I've got to pay like 1%, 2%, 3%? What do you mean?
Hmm.
Like, and it's made them vulnerable overnight because they were so used to basically not paying interest. We
America's
just
interest rate has jumped to has climbed like 5% in less than a year and a half.
yeah. In yours and my lifetime,
Hmm.
we remember uh, putting money in a bank account that was 8%, 9%. You could
Yeah,
get
yeah.
an account, and you know, if you were retiring, that was ideal. Your nest egg you could put into a bank account, knowing that you'll get some interest back that will help you into your retirement. These last 20 plus years where we've gone to zero interest has killed those people
Hmm.
because there has just been no benefit to using the money
Saving money. Yeah, there's
because
no
the minute you
benefit.
put it into a bank, it's losing value because the
Yeah.
governments are just printing more. I mean, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, all of these central banks, they're just printing more money, and the more money they print, the more it's devalued. And I wonder if we are looking at the beginnings of hyperinflation. What are we going to
Uh,
do? Are you going to increase the interest rates to battle inflation, but you wipe out um, millions of people who own homes because you increase certain people's mortgages by another 2 or 3%, and you're going to not only will they be in negative equity because they bought their houses at such an exorbitant rate,
yep.
but now they're living
Yep.
in a house that they can ill afford
They can't
because
afford. Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
won't be able to ride this out. And I had this conversation with some older ones who bought their houses. Oh, it's the same. It's
Mm.
exactly the same as it was. Under Margaret Thatcher, interest rates went up to silly amount. And I said, right, okay. I was like, simple mathematics should tell you that it's not the same
Mm.
because
What's the multiplier on a mortgage?
10%. Let's just say 10% on your £100,000 mortgage and
Hmm.
10% on your £350,000
Yep.
mortgage, keeping in mind that wages have not grown at the same rate as the price of houses. People, it used to be 3.5 times your wage.
3.5. Yep. Yep.
3.5 was what they would loan you.
Hmm.
Um, you can't do it now without bank of mum and dad giving a hefty deposit. And don't get me wrong, if you can get on the ladder, great, because it is brilliant. But we are talking about
I've seen mortgages 7 times your wage.
how do they expect these people to pay for that?
Yeah, that's
What they
insane.
what were they? And then you think, is this another bubble? Are we about to now see another explosion? Because
Well,
keeping in
that's a really good point. So I think what's happening, what's converging at the moment, is multiple bubbles.
yeah,
And that's why you said that you're talking to older heads and they're saying, "Oh, we've been through this before."
mm,
I don't think that that's the case. I think this is different
yeah,
because of so many things happening at once. Literally, these guys are playing sort of, like I said, this seesaw game with inflation and
interest rate,
the interest rate, right?
yeah,
Now, you've got the property bubble, you've got the banking and finance bubble, yeah, bond
yeah.
markets that are, they're already starting to tilt and go back down. So the banking crisis that has happened recently, think about the several banks over in America that just failed. I
Oh
think it
yeah,
was SVB,
yeah, that's right.
Silicon Valley Bank, right?
Yeah, that's not
Now,
the only one though. Quite a few of them have
no,
been.
there was a few.
Yeah,
Now, what it threw up was that during COVID, the restrictions that the banks normally had to have in terms of their insurance was removed.
Yeah.
And now I think they cover something like 250,000. That's how much they insured every depositor.
Oh, okay. In
Right?
America, it's 85,000 over here. I think the
Yeah,
FCS, FF, what
it's
is it?
85 over here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's 85 over here, 250 over there. Now, in that bank, most people, the average was like 2.5 million.
Yeah. So they got
So people losing like 90% of their money. The government is saying no one's going to lose their money. No one's. So what they've now said is that we're backing everybody. So what does that mean?
well, that just sends the signal to the bankers that they can just take more risk
They can
and
take
know
more
that they're
risk, but
and that
where's
they
the money coming from if you're going to do that?
that's the taxpayer.
Taxpayer and more money printing.
Yeah.
If you're literally saying that nobody is going to fail now
Yeah.
and everybody will be covered, that means more money printing. Money
Yeah.
printer goes brr. Yeah, we're going to get that
So
all day. That's what's going to keep happening. So they've just decided, well, until
well
we
that
can either bring in these digital currencies or whatever the case is, and do probably another little master stroke like they did with Bretton Woods,
yeah.
and move us everybody onto digital, they're going to just keep this sort of game of monopoly money running. It's yeah, I there's a good argument for hyperinflation. I think we're
Yeah.
seeing that around the world anyway in other countries. Um, I think we could be close to that with America.
But you know what's interesting is when you watch analysts talk about the impact of something like this.
Hmm.
Even if America becomes a, let's just say the currency war, is this the end of the US dollar? What we mean by the end of the US dollar isn't that the US dollar will just go into oblivion. It won't. But it just won't be what the rest of the world use. Because when you think about what America's quite self-sufficient, can produce its own food, produce its own gas, produce its
Energy.
own
Yep.
oil,
Yep.
energy is fine.
Yep.
It at the moment doesn't need the world. It's pretty much, well, do you know what? We don't need any of you lot.
It's almost symbolic, isn't it?
It's exactly that. It's almost as if no matter what, we kind of are pegged to the dollar. We need the dollar to work. And if it doesn't work, we will suffer well before the Americans ever will. Because America will eventually say, right, okay, let's go back to basics and just look after our own.
Yep.
That will cause a ripple in the bigger world, because the minute you start to look within yourself.
Do you not think that that's what they're already starting to do?
Yeah. I think I saw the writing on the wall when they pulled out of Afghanistan. They have for the last 40 years been the policemen of the world. If nothing happened for fear of the wrath of the Americans
States,
or
yep.
NATO, or there was always going to be there would always be ramifications if you messed with America. Case in point, Russia went into Ukraine. America pretty much moved them off the SWIFT system. They are unable to do business in the SWIFT system, but they haven't gone under.
And
Which
why?
Well, this is what we're saying about, is this the end of the dollar? Because the influence that the Americans thought they had has been shown to not be as strong as they thought. So they thought, take the Russians off the SWIFT system, deny them the ability to be able to do business. And all the Russians did was like, okay, hello, China. Hello, Iran. Hello, BRICS.
Hasn't the Russian ruble actually strengthened since these guys have tried to do this?
Yeah.
Right. So they've thrown everything at them, and Russia has now started to sell oil to India, China, other countries. Also, recently they signed a deal with Japan. Now,
who signed it with Japan?
Russia signed an oil deal with Japan.
So I will be doing further investigation.
Japan is a member of G7 and under the sphere of influence of US. So that is very interesting.
I'd
That's
be honest with you, I would that that has blown my mind, because signing an agreement, was this after or before Ukraine?
this is after this is recent. This is recent. I will double check my
That
facts,
supplies
but
me.
I'm
Are you?
pretty sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would
I
have.
I think this has happened. Um, yeah, we'll do some more research and confirm, but I believe that that's what's happened. Um, Japan is a member of G7. That's really big when
Yeah,
you think about it, right? So imagine Russia has taken the oil. I think even with Japan, they sold it at a premium. So it wasn't even like it was bargain basement prices or nothing like that.
we're talking. It was a good price.
It's a good price. And what they're doing also, it's all being traded in local currencies. So they are, like you said, America's saying, right, we're kicking you off the SWIFT. They're saying, okay, cool. But this $450 billion gas deal with China is going to be in yuan and ruble.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think
This,
that's going to be the issue, isn't it? Is whereby the the payment for oil. So at the moment, obviously,
everything's in dollars.
if I wanted to buy oil currently, with the agreements that were signed with, Richard Nixon's people went into Saudi just after they came off the gold system and said, look, if we want you to purchase oil, you do it with the petrodollar. You use our currency, which instantly made the rest of the world having to keep reserves of US dollars. They had to
Mhm.
keep a reserve to be
Yep.
able to do that purchase.
Mhm.
The current what's his name? The current crown prince in Saudi Arabia announced.
MBS.
Sorry, yeah, he
MBS.
announced that they will be not selling their oil in dollars.
Yep. Again, they're doing the deal in with Russia,
Yeah. Now
and
that
I
in
think that's
itself,
in rubles as well.
yeah, that in itself is a very, very it's a very dangerous thing that they're doing, keeping in mind that for the last 40 years they've been protected by the Americans.
Mm.
They had neighbors in Iran, they had neighbors in Iraq. There was turmoil within the actual peninsula. Different tribes would have wanted to have gained, power, and an American might kept those people at bay.
Yep.
Um, Saying, now that the Saudis are saying, right, okay, well, we're going to basically cut our ties with the Americans, is partly America's fault, because keeping in mind that America at the moment doesn't buy Arab oil, Saudi oil. It doesn't need to. It has its own oil, the shale. It's pretty much self-sufficient, so it doesn't need Saudi oil.
Mhm.
It probably buy it as a surplus, but for
Yep.
their actual nation, for their people, they don't need it. We do. The countries that don't produce oil need their oil, but we
Sorry,
also need.
I've
We
just
also
looked out. I've just looked out. Sorry to cut you. Yeah, Japan breaks with US allies and buys Russian oil. Yep. This is about 7 days ago.
Oh my goodness! Right, let me see. Hold on. Let me get this. I will, because this is very interesting.
And also what you're saying, yeah, it's when it comes to energy,
Yeah,
Russia is selling to so many parts of the world now and doing trade
probably that it didn't do before, right?
that it wasn't doing before, because
Just
it would have had most of that energy earmarked for Europe
yeah.
via the Nord Stream pipeline, which they blew up themselves. Right now, I yeah, I think that was
So
an oversight by America. It backfired somewhat.
yeah,
Definitely backfired. Are you looking out? Can you
I
see it?
am. I'm going to put it up on the screen.
Mm.
I just think that it's pretty pretty crazy.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah, yeah, yeah. So really, what we're talking about when we say the end of the US dollar, like you said, it's not that. It's they are losing the hegemony, the global hegemony right
yeah,
now. Yeah, so it is a slow sort of unwinding, and the the pieces are being sort of rescattered and forming new shape. So that has put China, so, I won't say ahead, but it's pretty close to America in terms of power and influence, sphere
That's
of
the
influence.
Japan. Yeah, look,
Yeah,
Japan breaks with US allies, buys Russian oil at price above cap.
see, yeah, yeah, there you go. Um,
I just can't believe what I'm reading. But this is, and how many days old is this? This is 2nd of
th- th-
April,
yeah,
2023.
a
Tokyo.
week ago, a week
So
ago.
this goes to show you that that maybe the wheels are starting to fall off on the block, but
Mm,
which is not, don't get me wrong, which is not good for Ukraine. You
no,
know what, we need a weak Russia to basically leave Ukraine and leave the Ukrainian people.
that's not going to happen.
We
That's not going to
It's not,
happen.
is it?
No, it's not going to happen.
No.
The thing is, they're going to have to broker a deal to settle the situation in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I think China is going to step into the breach, because um, some voices are saying that the Ukraine war is a proxy war,
Yeah.
yeah, for the US,
Yeah.
against Russia and China, etc. Now, China's masterstroke, I will say, is that they are playing the soft power hand,
Yeah.
whereas they are the carrot to America's stick. Yeah. China just recently brokered a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Wow.
Isn't that the Sunni and the Shiites, right?
Yes, they are. They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are ideological differences in their religion. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
What they
that,
need to do, though, is they need to go into Yemen.
well, to put it this way, to broker peace between those two nations, the
Yeah.
rest of the West have kind of profited on that war that has continued for decades. China's gone in and brokered peace. So it's soft power. I'm not saying that they're going in and it's for altruistic purposes. They've gone around the world and
Yeah.
they're investing. The what is it? The One Belt, One Road initiative,
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they've gone around the world, over 150 countries, and they are creating global infrastructure for trade, right? This has got everybody on side, whether you like it or not. Even the countries that are signing up probably know that, you know what, this is somewhat exploitative to whoever's taking the dollars from them,
Yeah.
but they're not doing it at the end of a barrel.
No, and I think,
It's making a
oh,
lot
I
of
see what you mean.
difference.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's soft power, and that has allowed them to get, so they've created a sphere of influence that is becoming as strong as America's sphere of
So are
influence.
you saying then that if we were to say that this was the end of the US dollar as the reserve currency,
Mm-hmm.
is it the RMB? RMB?
Renminbi, yeah, the
Yeah.
RMB, yeah.
Are we saying that that is going to be the new reserve currency of the world?
It's not going to happen in the West, is it? It's not. They're not going to
Well,
take that in the West.
this was, we talk about currency.
Mm.
Um, we've talked about paper money. The digital world is where I think we probably will end up, because I think there's been lots of studies of fiat currencies over the last 500 years. Um, every fiat currency always goes to nothing. Starting back from the guilder in the Netherlands, the UK pound,
Mhm.
um, that followed.
But that's what I was saying before. I think they're going to pull the master stroke of the old okey doke and sort of blow up the fiat and come in with the central bank digital currencies, the CBDCs.
So
And
is that where? Because I wrote down what the very last thing I wrote down on my notes was Black Swan event.
Oh man. Well,
And the
these
reason
days you're gonna have to come up with a different name because we've had so many of them. They're not really rare occurrences
they're
anymore,
not,
are they?
no, and this is the reason why I wrote that, was because I said, for us to have a system reboot, for us
Mhm.
to lose confidence in one thing and seamlessly transfer to another means of exchange, we will need to either do it peaceably, i.e., we've devalued, the pound. Before you and I were on this earth, the pound was devalued. They used to use the old shillings and halfpennies and all these weird money, and then they just went to a metric system, and that was it, and that was a pound, devaluing the money in the process, and that in itself was just a massive scam. But it was done peaceably. There wasn't a civil war to do that.
I don't think it's going to be peaceful.
But this is what I mean. You and I both have been watching what's been going on in the world with Ripple and XRP and the current court case that's happening at the moment. And if they win, what that will do for transactions for nations, because nations will take it on board, and what will that do for the early adopters of buying that coin and this, that, and the other. But that's the two choices we've got. It's going to be a very angry transference of your money that's in the bank has no value. What you own right now is what you have. Forget what you had in the bank because it's not there anymore.
I think,
or you digitalize that money, converting your dollar, your pound, your yen, or whatever, converting it to an equivalent coin in the crypto sphere. Could that be the way to do it?
Yeah, you kind of answered your own question there. So what they've done, we separate crypto from CBDCs. Yeah.
Okay.
The cryptos will be something you can own yourself privately. You can hold on your own devices, whether it's Ledger, Trezor, blah blah blah. Central bank digital currencies are exactly that. They're going to be maintained, controlled, and received by the central banks.
They'll be able to see everything you do.
They'll be able to see everything you do. They'll be able to restrict certain things. They'll be able to stop you from spending in certain places, blah, blah, blah. How are they going to get nations to adopt it? Well, you go to Nigeria, for example, and they're pulling out the cash out of the system. Right. They've actually forcibly taken out cash, and they're trying to get everyone onto their central bank digital currencies. Similar with India, they was trying to remove the cash out of the system. So you can see what the trend is of what they're doing. And they're starting to talk about, in America now, you've got their one, which is called, I think, FedNow.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So I think in the West, they're going to have to try and bribe us to adopt. So I think the Black Swan events you're talking about are where they are going to have banks that are going to collapse. There's going to be different things that are happening to say, well, okay, this is not safe anymore. We can't trust crypto. We need you to use this. How about everyone who uses this is going to get an account with 5,000 digital dollars in each account?
Oh, I see. There'll be a carrot. There'll be a financial carrot.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So do you remember? In fact, I know you remember this. In the early 90s, several banks went public, and each person was like being given, for an account, they were given like £500. Some were getting even more. Or here's £500 for your account. To no, even more than that. Actually, they were getting like £1,000. I remember there were banks that were small banks that were going from being a building society into a bank.
Oh, Santander.
Do you remember Nationwide? I mean, not Nationwide.
Abbey National to Santander. Yes.
Yeah, they were. Well, I think that was a buyout, wasn't it? I think they were bought by.
They gave people
were
shares
definitely. I remember thinking, "Wow, I own an account. I've got a bank account that's got no money in it, but because it's an account and it goes from being a building society to a bank, I'm going to get £500." And that is was a lot of money to us.
It's a carrot. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a carrot, right?
So that would be a very good carrot,
Hmm.
keeping in mind that most of that money that they make from doing that transfer would go on debt,
Yep,
on
yep.
debt payment. So,
Hmm.
in theory, and by doing that, further taking money out of the economy. Because
Exactly.
keeping in mind, as soon as you pay your money down to zero, that
Hmm.
money that digit no longer exists. Therefore, that money is now out of the system. We
Hmm.
could literally do that. If we paid, everyone paid off all their debt, there'd be no money.
Yeah, yeah.
Because obviously that's how debt is created, through just the fractional reserve banking. But it's interesting that if that would be the carrot that could obviously put one of many things they could do, because I did
I
say,
think it will be one of the few things that they're going to do.
yeah,
I mean, currently fear is the biggest currency, so
yeah,
they're gonna shock or scare us into accepting these things.
yeah.
Um, my advice is to make sure that you not not financial advice. I'm not giving them financial advice, but I'm
Buy
just
gold.
saying. But yeah, I'm just saying things that you can hold yourself.
Yeah,
That's probably where what I'm doing anyway. I would look to do that myself.
yeah. I think
Uh,
that
Um,
that's probably what people are doing now, aren't they?
mhm.
There's a lot.
Hold your own crypto, your own
Yeah,
keys.
have your own wallet. Don't
Yeah.
allow someone else to have the access to
Not
that.
on another exchange or anything like that. You
Yeah.
know, just
But then, or very simply, buying gold coins, silver coins.
mhm.
You've got to find a way in which basically you need to protect yourself from your money, because your paper money
Mm.
is being devalued through inflation.
We all need hedges against this inflation,
We actually
basically.
need to be
Yeah.
protected
Mhm.
from that sudden fall, because it's confidence. At the end of the day, at the moment, we're still confident that the dollar is a dollar and a pound is a pound, and a euro is a euro. We are still confident, even with this fiat currency debacle, but we're still confident in it because the government has given confidence to
Yep.
us. But
Mhm.
if, for instance, we wake up one morning and the government no longer has confidence in it, there'll be a run on the banks. The
Well,
banks will run. There will be a
that's
run on.
in America. They already just had that. Something like $45 billion was withdrawn, I think, within a day, and that's the fastest that so much has been taken out in banking history.
Yeah, and I would love to see the correlation to the crypto world, to gold, to silver, to I'd love to shares. I mean, I'd love to
Mhm.
see where, because money doesn't disappear, it just transfers.
Only other transfers.
So
Only other
so
transfers.
it transfers. So that would be my issue. That would be the question: is where is that money transferring to? So
Mm.
you know this whole thing, as we said,
That's
and as
another
you said,
podcast, mate.
it is, isn't it? It is. I know, and you know what? I really appreciate that. That you've spent the time. We've had this time to talk about it. Maybe,
I think, sorry to cut you. I think we covered sort of the arguments for, but
yeah.
what about the arguments against?
Okay. So this is what I wrote. Hold on one second. Let me put down.
I'll
Right.
kick off.
So
I'd say that,
okay, go on. I've got a couple, but go on.
well, okay, so US bases, military bases,
Yeah.
they have something like 750 military bases overseas in
Yeah.
over 80 odd countries. Um, their military might is unsurpassed.
Yeah.
750 billion a year in spending on the military.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think that's 3 times more than China, which is the very next on the list.
Yeah.
So, talking about China's soft power, well, welcome to the hard power. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of the reasons I think that you won't see the end of the dollar as the
Yeah.
way that, like, some sort of collapse, or what people are talking, a very dramatic type scenario. I don't think that's going to happen.
So okay, we'll do one each, and we'll keep
Yeah,
going. So my
yeah.
next, the one I wrote down was the Straits of Malacca. Now,
I
there's a
need some history on that.
okay. So when you talk about the um, exporting and importing to China, China is a heavy exporter of goods, very, very heavy exporter of goods. Its economy is run by exports. It's driven by exports. They actually don't have so they've managed to suck hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, but China don't make things for a Chinese economy. They make things for the economy of the world. And all of their stock, everything that they build, everything that they buy, everything that goes through them goes through a place called the Straits of Malacca. It is a very small channel of water. So a bit like the channel, a bit like the gap between Gibraltar and Northern Africa.
Okay.
It's a pinch point.
Yep.
You control that pinch point, you control what goes in and what goes out of that country.
Wow.
The Americans know that. And that's part of the reason why they've kept the Indonesians, the Cambodian, the Vietnamese, the Philippines. They've kept all of these people on side because they are very aware we've got more ships than you. We know that we can cripple your economy just by blocking the Straits of Malacca. Just by blocking that one strip of water with a few battleships, we can shut down your trade. Doesn't matter how many roads you build through Mongolia. Doesn't matter how many roads you try and build. You can't go through India because you've made enemies of them. You can't trust the Afghanistanians and the Kazakhstans. You can't trust that part of the world either. You can't go to the right because you walk headfirst into Japan. And right now, that nine dot basically the Chinese Sea, they claim it, but they can't claim it because obviously other countries have also claimed sovereignty, which is part of the reason why the Chinese were building these little islands to further out their shipping rights and this, that, and the other. But ultimately, wherever China seeks to go, it can't. It literally can't go that way. It literally can't go that way, and it can't go through the seas. The reason why I think that the dollar may survive or will survive with gunboat mentality is because of that one example. They literally control the waters. The Americans have sold and have had, military technology stolen for them to build their own ships. But when you read into it, you realize that the Chinese aircraft carriers, their battleships, their destroyers, they only have a window of 1,000 miles. It's nothing. It is, but that is basically protecting their own shores. So they could probably invade Taiwan because they could probably get there. It's close enough. But in terms of, we are going to now dominate the Chinese Sea, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do that because you're going to need to be able to resupply your ships. How are you going to do that when you're not friendly with Indonesia? You're not friendly with the Philippines. You're not friendly with the Vietnamese. You're not friendly with the Cambodians, the Chinese, the Laos, all these other, you've got North Korea, and don't get me wrong, they're nuts. They've got their finger on the pulse for nuclear weaponry, but they're more interested in South Korea than anybody else. They've got, there are, and this is where we said about soft and hard. If we're going to go really old school, I'm going to fight you, they won't win. And that ties in with your military bases. Those military bases are strategically placed. Points where it hurts. Britain worked that out over 150 years ago. Build harbors in strategic positions and you will control everything. Why is it that even now, up to this day, we still have a harbor in Gibraltar? What business have we got there? Spain are looking at that and going, imagine Brighton being owned by the French.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, there's this little town at the end of my country and the end of my peninsula. It ain't mine, though. It's owned by the French.
And the reasoning publicly is also very diplomatic and everything, but really it all boils down to military, strategic pinch points and
Yes.
whatnot. Yeah.
And so when you do your research on the control of the economy, it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to buy your oil in dollars. Well, build a pipeline through war-torn countries that will say, well, no, I don't want you to build your, you know, if you want to build your pipeline through a Muslim country, how about explain to us what you've been doing to them Uyghurs? Because I swear they're Muslim. Get what I mean? You're gonna have to explain. Oh, by the way, yeah, we've been trying to re-educate, Uyghurs, and we've been, exterminating them and cutting their ability to have babies because we want to try and remove them. Oh, but they're Muslim, so you're gonna have to explain that to your Muslim counterparts who are going to say, actually, no, we're not happy with that. So you can't build a pipeline. You might be able to get one from Russia, but that's all relative. Russia has kind of shown its weakness with its strong power because little old Ukraine is kind of battering them to a stalemate at the moment. They can't win it, but they can't lose. It's almost like
yes, exactly.
Well, just keep throwing men into this country until you quit. Afghanistan, basically, which is no good to anybody because it just
pretty
turns
much.
Ukraine,
You're right.
Turns Ukraine into it turns Ukraine into an area of desolation. Is it Mariupol or whatever it is just waste.
Mariupol.
Yeah. So that was my first point. Have you got one? Or I'll come up with my second.
Okay, so energy.
Yeah.
The US produces its own energy.
Yeah.
It's now filled the Russian gap after the sanctions.
Yeah.
It's supplying to the EU. It's
crazy.
supplying to the UK.
Yeah.
They really seem to be the winner from that Nord Stream pipeline blowing up by the Russians. Apparently.
Blowing up, yes.
Yeah. I mean,
it blew up.
Somebody tell the Russians where the tap was. Just tell them to turn the tap off. They didn't need to blow it up, did they?
Do you know what I mean? I mean, I saw that.
Did you see Biden when he said they've got footage of him and somebody says something about that pipeline and he's like, listen, the Russians won't be supplying them anymore.
Yes.
There won't be any more supply. They said, well, how do you know that?
Maybe someone
trust me. Trust me. They won't. No. Then a week later, it gets blown up.
It was very, very, very. But do you know what? As you said, America has stepped into the vacuum.
Yeah.
Whereby we are, and you can't tell. They say that after the dollar, the most traded currency is then the euro, but that's because it's within Euro world, the Euro land.
Yes. Yeah.
That may change because Germany, as a powerhouse, is no longer. Germany's whole model is based on the cheap energy it was getting from Russia. It was its whole, Volkswagen, Audi, all of their infrastructure was all based on the fact that they could get cheap energy from the Russians, which would cement what they do now. Yep. That's going to change, and there's going to be massive changes so the euro won't be. This is I'm saying that because the euro may not be as powerful as it is. Britain has now left the euro. It never was, obviously, it never ever was in the euro with the currency, but it was still a major player in terms of spending.
Yep.
But the one that I think is probably the biggest, this is the one that I think has the most impact of anything. Doesn't matter about a war, doesn't matter about disease, it doesn't matter about anything else. The biggest reason why I think that the US dollar will be here for the foreseeable future, not forever, mind you, because I think it will it won't battle against countries. It will eventually battle against individuals. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it will fail because it's lost to China or it's lost to Russia. I think it will fail because it lost to digital. I think that's going to be why I think it would fail in years to come. But the third point I put, which is kind of crazy, is birth rate. China's birth rate is in the toilet. They already know, and when you look at the demographics of each country should have like a perfect triangle with their birth rate, with the oldest people being at the top and lots of young people at the bottom.
Mm.
With their one child policy, they skewed their figures. They messed up their birth rate. So they have lots of old people and not enough young people. In fact, they don't even have enough people of our age to even work and carry that on.
Contribute. Yeah.
So we are talking about a system where within the next 10 years, I mean, within the next year or so, India will overtake China anyway. India is going to be the highest populous country in the next, year, 2 years, I believe. It may even be sooner. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll have to do some checks on that. But
I think
China,
they're neck and neck at the moment.
yeah, neck and neck. But China doesn't have the longevity to be able to pull this off and become the main player as the new petrodollar. I think we are going to get feudal. I think it's just going to go back. This whole experiment with the Bretton Woods was an experiment. You know, we're talking. It's been an experiment that's lasted for 70 years or the lifespan of an average human, and we all know that experiments tend to only last the lifespan of a human, and then a new generation kicks in.
Yeah.
And they do things in a different direction. They go somewhere else. They do something different. They go, we don't want to do it that way. We want to do this. You know, you said it earlier. The protections we put in banks to protect us from ourselves being stupid were put in 50 odd years ago. 50 years later, all those people that were working have now retired. You've got new people in there and go, oh, what if we take those controls off? We can make more money. Let's do that. Boom, crash. Oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that because they knew that 50 years ago. Do you get what I'm saying? It's that. So I look at it as the reason why I think that it wouldn't be the Chinese currency. Partly is because of the age issue. They are. I believe that in the next 5 years we're going to be talking about. I think that we're going to be talking about serious internal conflicts in China in the next 5-10 years. 100%, because at the moment they're being held together by the Communist Party.
Yep.
They have gone into places like Tibet, who want their people back. They've been oppressing the Uyghurs in the north. I think it's in the northwest of the country. They've got lots of different nations that have made up one set of people, and I think that eventually they'll just break up. You know, we had it. You know, the UK is such a small island. We've got the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish, and the English, and it's taken us thousands of years to just live. Like, you know, I'm not going to try and kill you, and you're not going to try and kill me. We're just going to have to accept that I don't like you. You're Welsh, you're English, but they've kind of made it into a joke now. But if you go back 500 years, they hated each other.
Oh yeah.
Do you get what I mean? There was a real, I'm going to fight you. I don't want you on my land. Get out. Well, it's taken that amount of time to work their way. And then we actually got a currency and we built on it. And then we suddenly went, well, let's gang together. And we've industrialized before everybody else. Guess what? We could be more powerful than everybody else. Let's go to Africa and cut it up. Let's go to Asia and cut that up. Let's go to America. We didn't hit America. America was too good. You know, do you get what I mean?
But then don't you think that then that's what the Chinese would do?
So China is a lot older than China.
They're a lot older,
it's
and
thousands. Is
culturally as well. I think this is where they may have some sort of cross purposes with Russia in terms of how their outlook. So Russia's very strategic.
Yeah,
its favorite pastime is chess, isn't it? So they know about moving nine moves ahead of their opponent and stuff like that.
Yeah,
China thinks in decades ahead, in centuries ahead. So,
but you say that, and I used to believe that as well under the feudal system that they used to have.
Yeah,
but we're talking they are also in an experiment. They're in a communist experiment. This communist experiment is new. It's still the age of a lifespan.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? Like we've got monarchy that outdates lifespan because Victoria, then George or Edward, and blah 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 blah, Queen Elizabeth, and then we get to that monarchy is a system that that outlives the lifespan of the average person. But communism is an experiment that didn't work in Russia and it failed. It's working in China, but it's failed really because it's now a capitalist. It has a capitalist model in many ways. It's not true communism. It encourages innovation,
Yep.
whereby, and it doesn't say, right, you're a doctor, you're going to get paid the same amount as a brain surgeon. They don't do that. America's not. China has had to evolve, so it's like a modern day communism, which to me says experiment. So this is why when you say, like,
so it could go either way. It could go either way.
It could go either way, yeah. And that's why I've said that, because of their age and the fact that they're aging. Meanwhile, America pretty much is quite young still, and it's quite happy to open up its borders when it's ready to the Mexicans to, lower the birth, sort out that birth rate. Yeah, maybe they built a bit of a wall, but they'll still get any.
I think China. I think when it comes to the birth rate, the Chinese thing isn't going to be that much of an issue, though.
You're kidding me? Oh, hold on. It's worse than a. Hold on.
Because a lot of the official figures are not. I won't say they're not real, but the one childbirth thing.
Yeah.
Families, if they had more than one, they used to just ship the others out to family in the countryside to raise their kids, so they still had one officially on record.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, but the problem was with girls. They tended to, unfortunately, execute, or you would have a boy over a girl. So they could probably have a very good army, but
not too much in reproduction. Yeah.
But this is, and so hold on, let me. I think this one's modern. Let's have a look. Right. So if you look at that, this shows you China, and I think it's a very, so as you see, remember what I said to you, that the how that should look is like a mountain, like Mount Fuji. It should look perfectly like that.
Yeah.
So they should always have lots of young people, and it should slowly go up and get, I mean, like there's one here. Which one's this one was? Is this? So that was 2005. Yeah.
Yep.
That looks pretty normal to me. Yeah, there's a little bit of a blip with the 25s to 20-year-olds. But then once you get to the prediction, you start to see that there's more old people than there are young.
Sure.
And that is the problem. Why I think that when it comes to, so it's all well and good, who's going to pay your pension?
But that's the thing, that what Germany did, didn't they? When they just let 1 million people in, that was to
make sure that, so that's gonna. China isn't built that way, though, because obviously China isn't a free enough society that you can just say, oh, do you know what? Come to China and rebuild your life. It's great over here. Just don't be don't say anything about the Communist Party. Do you get what I mean? It's not the sort of place where you could just do that. You don't have the freedoms.
No, that's fair enough.
You couldn't be. It's not as. There's a lot. I don't even know the protect. I don't even know what you can and can't do over there because I've not been. But what I mean is that from my observations, it's not as free as it's not as free a country as, say, oh, I want to now pick up and go to Germany to live, or I want to go and I want to go to move to I don't know, Spain. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So they are going to need to, through taxes, they are going to need to basically change the system. They have to make it financially easy for you to have babies, and lots of them. They're going to have to do that. If they don't do that, then that model is going to get worse. That model is when I look at that model that I've just shown you with those people, that model will pretty much ruin their economy because.
But that speaks to China. But I mean, we're still talking about the US, right? So
yeah. So what I'm saying, no, but that's what I was trying to say.
yeah,
That is the reason why I don't believe that the
no one's
Chinese,
replacing them. No
yeah,
one's
that's what,
replacing America. Yeah,
no
yeah,
one. That's
get it,
what I mean.
get
So
it.
there is
Yeah.
always that. But then that's why I wrote in big letters, Black Swan. There's going to be something so monumental, so huge, and it could be, it could be that China takes on Taiwan at the same time that Russia takes on Ukraine. America can't fight on two
Wow.
fronts. It can't
Yeah.
fight on two fronts. It can't. It
Yeah.
just that's just too big a that you need to knock out one and then go for the other. You can't have both.
Sorry, didn't China just start putting some boats on the water like a
Yeah, they
couple
were
of days
doing
ago?
testing. They were just
Yeah.
doing they were doing
Mm.
testing for a an amphibious assault on the island of Taiwan.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. This could potentially be a black swan. We could be looking at it right now, where the Russians, we're just doing military testing in Belarus. We're just doing military testing, and then bang, they went in
Yeah.
and attacked. Could that be what they do in Taiwan? Could
Mm.
be. Could Iran suddenly jump into Saudi? Could
Yeah.
what other, could, I don't know, Venezuela suddenly now go into Paraguay or to
Yeah.
Uruguay? Or do you get what I mean? There's lots of potential, at the moment you've got Guyana that is at the moment on the cusp of potentially becoming one of the most richest nations in the world with its
100%.
reserves.
Yep.
Well, you've got Venezuela looking at them and going, but we've got that as well. We've got an army, and we could quite easily take it over. We're not beholden to the Americans. Do you get what I mean? There could be a potential black swan that we can't see, which people would then do what they did in Bretton Woods. Oh, be careful, guys. Let's all gang together and hedge our bets to the US dollar.
Yep.
Let's be safe. Let's be stable. Let's make sure that we do the right thing.
Okay.
Meanwhile, America goes, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. So what it looks like to me is that we're on the precipice of something big,
massive,
right? But it's all the pieces are up in the air at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, I think within the next 6 months, we will probably revisit this, and it's going to look very different.
100%. It would be interesting. Maybe we should do
some pieces would have
a part two.
Part two. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing I had about America, why they wouldn't it wouldn't be the end, is tradition. I mean, currently they still sit at the head of the table for the West. They are still seen as a global policeman of the West. At the moment, who else would replace them over this side?
Yeah.
I don't see anyone. So
well, you're right, and I think that there is merit in stability. The very last thing that I actually wrote down on my paperwork was I literally wrote because they don't want to. Now, what I meant by that was is India going to say, yeah, we'll use your currency? No, they are as much a competitor to India as anybody else. Will the Philippines go, yeah, okay, we'll use your... No, because they are, again, a competitor. We are talking, there are lots of countries out there that will go, we would rather just carry on doing what we're doing right now than help you as a neighbor become bigger than us. Because we can stomach America being massive. You're too far away from us. You're so far away, you're so far removed that it doesn't matter. But on my doorstep, to have a world power with that amount of clout, and now I've got to use my money to convert into your money. And that's why I think it will. And I don't think Europe will ever do. I think Europe, purely on the... could be racial, it could be, there could be a
history,
historical. There is no way they're going. They will do it at the end of a bayonet. Rather than we are going to now start doing it. We're going to start, whistling and to
And
your
also remember that all of these allegiances that are just popping up, whether it's BRICS and all of the
yeah,
emerging countries and everything, this is also an experiment, and they're quite fragile ties
yes,
that haven't had any stress tests
no,
yet.
no.
So
I mean, and it all depends on the political situation at the time.
yeah,
Brazil have just got a new leader, so they've gone
exactly.
from a right wing
There you
or
go.
right leading now to a
There you go.
leftist type style
Yeah.
leader.
Save Trump gets into power, and
Yeah,
then another Bolsonaro gets into power in Brazil. That
yeah.
could undo. That can undo
It-
things.
and that's what I mean. And so if you've got, obviously Russia's pretty much out there as a pariah nation now. That's going to be Russia. Even if Russia now annexed the entire country of Ukraine, they will never be allowed to come back in ever into that. They've shot themselves in the foot because they thought that they thought it would be Crimea part 2, and it didn't work. And now they've got Afghanistan part 2.
Yeah,
India
yeah,
is I think the pivotal nation. It's got the manpower. It's got the potential to do the Chinese model.
yeah,
Build the sweatshops, become the industrial warehouse of the world. It's got the people. They just need the
yeah.
infrastructure, and they can build up and raise millions of people out of poverty that they have at the moment. China obviously is already there, but I think China is going to start slowly losing its influence, which is partly why I think they're trying to do Taiwan now. I think this is the last push, because in
Yeah,
10 years'
yeah,
time, they won't have the manpower to be able to take on Taiwan, because Taiwan's birth rate's not bad. Even
yeah.
though it's smaller, they've got a lot of people on that island, and they all do national service. So imagine they
Okay.
do national service. So in the UK, he gave me a gun. I might try and press the button and the safety's on, and I wouldn't know where the safety was. But imagine that every person in the UK
Yeah,
is trained in how
has
to use a
been trained.
firearm. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's Finland, right? Finland right now, they do national service. They have just become the newest member of NATO,
NATO.
and
Yeah,
Russia went for Ukraine because it said, "Oh, I need a border, I need a buffer state." Now you've got 1,000 odd miles of NATO on your doorstep. It was a complete and utter nonsense. And South Africa is a failed state. Sorry. South Africa should be the richest country in the earth. It has everything. It has minerals. It has diamonds. It has gold. It has everything you could possibly think of. But it has
anywhere in Africa. Yeah, I
but
agree. Yeah,
but
South
over
Africa and Congo definitely are the
yeah
richest places on
yeah
earth. Should
the
be.
they have lithium and all these isms and all these different all these different things they can dig out of the ground that have got worth.
Yeah.
And yet, because the political structure there is, we'll give you this if you give us guns. Once they get
Yeah.
over that, they'd be amazing. So
Yeah.
I think the BRICS nation, as strong as they are, they still are not strong enough to take on is it hegemony? Is that the word I'm thinking of?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of the
The
American,
global hegemony of
yeah,
America.
of the
Yeah. Yeah.
American influence. But as I said, Black Swan, watch this space.
Who knows? Yeah.
Right. LD,
Yes,
again, that
sir.
was an amazing discussion. Thank you very, very much for your time. I'm
No,
looking
bro.
forward
Thank
to
you.
the next subject. Any concluding comments before we end out?
Yeah, I'd say in conclusion, it's not the end of the dollar, but definitely a seismic change in the global order. Yeah. Will the US go down? Probably not, but if it does, it will go down fighting. So I would probably expect some more wars, covert and overt. Because remember, like you say, it won't take much to sow some seeds of dissent among some of these allegiances that are starting to come up at the moment.
Definitely.
But it will be the slow and steady decline of the West as emerging economies increase in power and influence. Yeah.
That was very good concluding comment. Thank you. Brilliant. LD, take care, man. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe. Send this out. Share this out to your friends. We are starting out. We love these discussions. We no doubt would love your comments to see how you see things. So make sure you leave a comment or two.
For
We
sure.
are out. Peace. Thank you so much. Take care and laters.